Hey, it's me, Althazar, and welcome to another video. In this one, we're going to be going over the 3-color and colorless Planeswalkers in Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest, and I'm going to break them down into a little tier list and recommend which ones you should get your hands on. So, just like the others, I'm going to really quickly show off the mono and dual colors, just so you can see them in the event that you did not see those videos. But basically, you're going to want to get all the S-tier Planeswalkers and get your hands on as many of the A-tier ones as possible, too. So I would suggest Jace, Unraveler of Mysteries, Koth, and Nissa Worldwaker for monocolored. For dual-colored, I would suggest Rawl, Teferi, and Kiora. And then this is going to bring us to the 3-colored and the colorless ones. So let's go ahead and start with Koth, not Balas. Karn. I always say Koth when I'm thinking Karn and Karn when I'm thinking Koth. It's just that 4-letter K, right? So at face value, Karn doesn't look great, right? So he's got +1 to all of his mana bonuses. He's got 5 for spells, 6 for supports, nothing special. But he really makes up for that in his abilities. Now, something to keep in mind, because Karn is one of those colorless walkers, the leveling cost is very high. It's kind of prohibitive, actually, for that matter, for newer players. But that being said, it is entirely worth it for all 5 of these S-tier walkers. So Karn's first ability is going to be that you pick one of the top 3 cards of your library, you fetch that card, and exile the others. Then your mana bonuses are going to go up according to that card's colors. If it's colorless, all your mana bonuses go up by 1. If it's colored, all of your mana bonuses go up by 2 for each of that card's color. And then this is a permanent mana bonus increase, but you can't increase a mana bonus more than 3 times. So you'll find that your mana bonuses with Karn are going to get a lot higher than they will be with any other Planeswalker. And on top of that, because this ability only costs 4 loyalty, you're going to find that you can spam it pretty often to get specifically the cards that you want in order to complete objectives. So objectively speaking, yes, pun intended, Karn is probably the best PvE Planeswalker. And for that matter, for a lot of PvE events, he can really do a lot of good work too. Now, keep in mind that for these colorless walkers, they can use cards of whatever color the objective node allows you to use a Planeswalker for. So if you can use any color Planeswalker, then you can use any color card. But if you throw Karn into like Trial of the Plains Blue, you can only use blue cards and colorless. So watch out for that. Now, the second ability, Tolarian Legacy, it only costs 8. For that matter, all of Karn's abilities are really cheap Planeswalker ability-wise, right? So for loyalty, they're really cheap to use. So for this, you're going to pick one of the first 3 different cards you control from exile, and then that card comes back to your hand and gains 6 mana. So it's pretty useful. In the event that you exile a card that you want, you can just go ahead and use Tolarian Legacy and bring it back. And then finally, for Argentum's Legacy, you create a construct token. And this construct token actually does quite a few things and is very useful. So while you control 3 or more supports, the creature gets prevent damage, which is, okay. But more importantly, at the end of your turn, if you control 2 or more supports, a support you control gains 2 shield. Then return the first support from your graveyard to your hand, and it gains 10 mana. So what's really good about this is that for all those supports that benefit from having greater shield counts, this is going to actually help you boost those up. And so you can get increased abilities or you can get more triggers for them, which is pretty cool, or activations, whatever it may be. And then for returning supports from your graveyard to your hand, this allows you to dump supports and get them back, or if you have supports that use themselves up, like a Saga, and we're going to be seeing Sagas again in Beyond Death, Theros. So it just gives you a lot of freedom with supports, and that makes Karn really, really cool. So between the increase to the mana bonuses, the ability to filter for cards that you want, and just this little token, Karn is a very, very good Planeswalker. Next up, we've got the Bolases. Now, here, I'm sure there are going to be people who disagree with me. You're welcome to your own opinion with the Bolases. You really can't go wrong with any of them. For that matter, I happen to think that Bolas the Ravager is the best. I like Bolas the Ravager. I think it's actually the best Planeswalker in the game. And so now let's go over why I think it's the best Planeswalker in the game. So the 6 spells, 6 supports is nothing special. As the Bolases go, his blue, black, and red mana bonuses are the worst. So he gets 3/2/2, whereas Dog Pharaoh over here gets 3/3/3, and this one over here gets like 4/4/3 or something like that. So his is the lowest here, but he also has the best off-color matches. So he's got 0 and 0, whereas both of these guys have negative matches there. So this allows you to play him in a sort of defensive way. So you can actually match your opponent's gems and still get pretty decent mana out of them. And I really like that. Now, as for his abilities, keep in mind this Planeswalker flips, so it has two sides to it. On the first side, you've got Scheming Conqueror, draw 2 cards, give both of them 3 mana. It's pretty decent for completing objectives. I don't use this ability too much, but it does see some play. We've got Maddening Aura, which would be an amazing Planeswalker ability on anything. So your opponent discards their first and last card, and then increase the cost of cards in your opponent's hand by 3. So it's kind of like Liliana 1's ability, first ability, except only your opponent discards, and you increase the cost of the cards in your opponent's hand. The downside is that it costs 9 more loyalty. This is great for control, so if you see that your opponent's charging up a card that costs a lot of mana, and they're really close to casting it, and you've got this up, just get rid of it. It's really, really powerful. And then finally, we've got Bolas's Rising, and this ability is completely nuts. So deal 20 damage to target creature, lose 5 life. If that creature died, create a Bolas's Spark token with 4 shields, and then, no, that's not 4 shields. It's just this support can't be destroyed or exiled, so it's an infinite support. And then at the beginning of each turn, you gain 2 loyalty. So you gain 2 loyalty at the beginning of each of your turns, and at the beginning of each of your opponent's turns, which is 4 loyalty for each of your turns. And then it transforms. And this transform side is what makes him by far the best Planeswalker in the game to me. So the first ability costs 9, but that's really, you can ignore that for the most part because you're getting an extra 4 every turn, not including your matches. And this is going to deal 10 damage to target creature or Planeswalker. So you can just use him to burn your opponent pretty much every turn if you're running gem conversion, which is pretty crazy. That's a lot of damage to be doing just from your Planeswalker abilities. You can actually win games with just Bolas, him. You don't even have to use cards in your deck. Like, I've actually won a game just trying to use only his abilities and succeeded in doing so. There really aren't many other Planeswalkers that can do that. The second ability, Evoke the Fallen, it's going to return the creature with the most reinforcements from your graveyard to the battlefield with all of its reinforcements, then reinforce it. So as games go, if you flip this guy, maybe your opponent's killing off your creatures, maybe you've done something to put creatures in your graveyard, use this ability, you get them back, and you get all of them back and reinforce it again. So it kind of makes you immune to control. And then finally, this ability here, this one is the ability that, along with Teferi, is, I think, the most powerful control ability in the game. So Overwhelm the Gods, you create a Major Bolas's Omnipotence token. It has 12 shields, and at the beginning of every turn, this support loses 1 shield, and your opponent can't draw cards. Now, it actually is, I'm pretty sure it's actually only on your opponent's turn that it loses a shield, and so on your opponent's turns, it loses a shield, and then your opponent can't draw. And because, even though it costs 21, you're gaining all that loyalty, what you can just do is you can just stall the game and wait for your opponent to play all their cards and just keep spamming this ability and use your other control and make it so that your opponent is locked out of cards for the rest of the game. Or you can use a spell like Days Undoing that has each player shuffle or discard their hand and draw a new hand. And that just completely wipes your opponent's hand. They play the rest of the game with a 0-card hand as long as you ensure that this is going. So this is a level of lockdown and control that no other Planeswalker can achieve in the game. So if you don't have Bolas the Ravager, get him. He's really, really good. Like, when I first saw him, I was like, he's not good. And so I didn't get him. And then after a little while, I did wind up getting him, and I'm so glad that I did because I use him a lot. He's nuts. Now, after that, we've got our next Bolas, and this is the Dog Pharaoh, right? So Bolas Dog Pharaoh is very good. I use this one in Legacy, whereas I use this one here in Standard. So this one has 3/3/3, and I use this one in Legacy because it's easier to get Omniscience out by tabbing with these guys than it is with him. So that's really the only reason I use him in Legacy instead. And so he's got 8 spells, which is really nice. He's got 5 supports, which is okay. The creatures, it doesn't matter. But it's just that his abilities aren't as good. So the first ability is just destroy target creature your opponent controls, and that's a very powerful ability, don't get me wrong. Great ability, it's really annoying to play against. The second ability, Plague of Locusts, you draw 2 cards and summon an 8/8 zombie. I mean, that's really a mediocre ability. The other Balas is going to draw you cards for a lot less, and it's going to give them mana, so I like that more. And then Call of the Scarab, the last creature that entered your graveyard gains zombie and is returned to the battlefield. Then your opponent takes X damage, where X is the number of zombies you control times 9. That's a maximum of 27 damage. If that said, like, deal X, where X is the number of zombies and zombie reinforcements you control, then this dude would be an absolute monster. And it's not to say that he isn't a monster. He's amazing, like one of the best Planeswalkers in the game, hands down. I just prefer Bolas the Arisen because I happen to think that his abilities do a little bit more for you. Nonetheless, if you don't have this guy, get him. He's game-changing. Now, this brings us to Brokan. Brokan very much so deserves the name Brokan. Sarkhan Unbroken is really just broken. A lot of people will say that this one's the best Planeswalker in the game. I still think it's Bolas Arisen, but Unbroken gives him a pretty darn good run for his money. So Sarkhan Unbroken has that nasty combo of green and blue, but he also has red. His mana bonuses are okay. It's +3 to all of his colors, -1 to the off colors. 7 spells is really nice. 6 supports is okay. And his abilities are pretty darn decent. Now, the first ability is okay. The second ability is not great. And the third ability is bonkers. So the first ability, is draw a card, then increase your mana bonus on each of that card's colors by 2 for 3 turns. Now that includes your opponent's turns, so it's really just 2 of your turns. But nonetheless, it's nice to be able to draw a card and then just have your mana bonuses increased. This is especially nice for Legacy, where you're probably going to draw some kind of green gem conversion, and then you get to boost this paltry 3 to 5, which is really nice for the mana boost. So that's really where you're going to get your use out of that. Or just if you need to draw cards to complete an objective in an event, you'll wind up using that Whispers of Googan. Temur's Hunger is going to create a dragon token. Even though it says that the token comes out with +X/+X, where X is the sum of your blue, green, and red bonuses, that's 3, 6, 9, +1 is 10. So this is really just going to be coming out as a 10/10. You're probably not going to be using the first ability and then this. For that matter, you're better off just spamming the third every time it comes up. So there really isn't going to be a lot of utility for the second ability. But this third ability is crazy. So fetch the next 3 creatures with the power of 6 or greater from your library and give them full mana. Then all creatures in your hand gain haste. So all these creatures that you fetch, they get haste. And then they wail on your opponent. And because Brokan has access to green, you've got gem conversion, and you're going to get that off a lot. Like, a lot. It's really, really strong. So if you don't have Sarkhan Unbroken, Unbroken is actually one of the ones that I would absolutely go and target. For that matter, what I would suggest is go, if you have none of these, go Karn, go one of the 3 Bolases, Sarkhan, and Tamiyo. So that's definitely what I would do. So that's Brokan. Tamiyo took me some getting used to, and the more I've used Tamiyo, the more I like Tamiyo. So Tamiyo has awful mana gains. 2, 3, 2, and then 0 to both of those. She's got 8 spells, which is amazing. She's got room for 6 supports, which is good. Her health is 103, which is pretty low. But where Tamiyo is weak here, she's really, really strong down here, specifically on that third ability. So the first ability, Seek the Truth, is only 5 loyalty. Draw 2 cards. Target opposing creature gets -6, -0 until the beginning of your next turn. Now, keep in mind, you cannot use this ability unless your opponent has creatures. So that really neuters the ability a lot, because if you're playing a control deck, your opponent might not have creatures. So I find that has really limited my use of Seek the Truth. Oboro Knowledge is also pretty decent. Oh man, I just can't say it that way. I know that she's a Japanese-themed walker. It's Oboro, all right? So Oboro Knowledge is going to make it so you disable the first 2 opposing creatures until the beginning of your next turn, and disable the first non-creature card in your opponent's hand. I sometimes get use out of this, so like I'll use it to lock down my opponent so that I can try and prevent damage or something like that. But by and large, I just try and use this third ability as much as possible. So the third ability, Catalyze Stories, is draw 6 cards and then increase your blue, green, and white mana bonuses by 12 for 4 turns. Now, that includes your opponent's turns, so it's just 2 of your own. But increasing your mana bonuses by 12 for a green Planeswalker is bonkers, because you just use gem conversion and you get crazy mana. For that matter, with some of the new cards that have come out, there's ways that you just get 30 loyalty a turn. So you give Tamiyo 30 loyalty a turn, and so you get this to stack twice for plus 24 to your mana bonuses, and you're drawing 6 cards a turn. Like, Tamiyo is absolutely unbelievable. And to have access to white, blue, and green is also crazy. You've got like the best control with the best card draw and mana gain. So those 3 together, you can use most of the best cards in the game and make some really good decks. So if you don't have Tamiyo, absolutely see that you get Tamiyo. Now, this Bolas. Why do I have this Bolas as A instead of as S? So this Bolas has what I feel are the best mana gains for its colors. So it's got 4/4/3. It's got -2 to both of the off colors, which is unfortunate. The health is crazy at 134. It's got 7 spells, 6 supports, which is really good. And the abilities on the front end are very, very good. So the first ability, Spark Gatherer, is draw 2 cards. Your opponent exiles the last card from their hand. Then create a Gathering Sparks token. So it's a support with 3 shields, and whenever your opponent activates a loyalty ability or a Vanguard ability, gain 2 loyalty. This is actually a pretty useful ability, and I like it, but it just isn't like super powerful like the abilities of these 2. Then we've got Dragon God's Scorn, and this one is very powerful. So it's 12 loyalty, so it's more than the 9 of this guy over here, and it's going to destroy the opposing Vanguard support with the greatest shield, if you can't destroy the opposing creature with the greatest toughness. I happen to like his ability more because it's 3 loyalty less and it destroys creatures first, whereas not all the Vanguards are cards that you feel the need to immediately destroy. So I like that you have the choice of what you're destroying with that, but nonetheless, this is a very good ability. Now here is my beef with this Bolas. Ascension to Godhood. Deal 30 damage to your opponent's Planeswalker. Then destroy all your legendary cards and deal 5 damage for each card destroyed this way. This here is my beef. Then destroy all. If it didn't have destroy all and it just had the and then deal 5 damage for each legendary card you control, that would be really cool. But that this just neuters your board position, you have to use this as a I win the game. It doesn't give you a lot of utility, and I don't like that. Now, with that in mind, that means that I'm really just going to be spamming abilities 1 and 2. And honestly, I would rather be able to get my creatures back and destroy targeted from Dog Pharaoh, or just all the crazy utility that you get from both sides of Bolas Arisen over here. So this Bolas, Dragon God, is a great Planeswalker. For that matter, compared to all the other like monocolored or dual colored walkers, it's absolutely an S tier Planeswalker, but just compared to these guys, he's just a touch below them. So I would honestly target these 5 instead, and if you have both of these Bolases, you really don't need a third one. Now this brings us to we skip all the way down to E tier, and we skip all the way down to E tier for the Eldrazi Desolation and Googan because their abilities are terrible. Let's go to Ted first. So Ted, we call him Ted because the Eldrazi Desolation, T-E-D, Ted. And it makes him almost endearing. His mana gains are awful. So 2/2/1, that's just bad. He's, just bad. The 7 and 6 is really nice for spells and supports, but the abilities just aren't great. So target non-colorless creature gets -3/-3. Even though that's permanent, that's really not great. Create 3 Eldrazi Scion tokens, mediocre. Then the second ability, ingest 6, your opponent exiles the last 2 cards from their hand. For 12, I would want to be exiling the first 2, not the last 2. So this is a stinker. Which brings us to our third. Maybe this is good. Process 3. So you take those ingested gems and process them. Your opponent loses 10 life, then move the first 2 cards from your opponent's exile to your hand with full mana. So I hate playing with my opponent's cards, unless it's something like Atali, so this ability is also pretty bad to me. So you take a look at all 3 abilities. All 3 abilities are bad. The mana bonuses are bad. There's just really no good reason to spend all of these runes and these gems to purchase Ted. You're way better off with so many other Planeswalkers. He's very bad. The only thing he has going for him is that you can use like every color in some of his decks, but that's it. He's very bad. So this brings us to Googan, and yes, Googan is in some ways better than Ted, but I hate Googan too. So Googan's got +1 to all gains. He's got 6 for spells, 7 for supports. That 7 for supports is amazing. The leveling cost for Googan is way cheaper for some reason. Don't know why. Probably because he's not great. And then the first ability is deal 4 damage to a creature. If that creature is colored, increase your mana bonuses on each of that creature's colors by 2. Each mana bonus can't be raised by this ability more than 3 times. This is kind of like Urza, but you need to be able to burn a creature, and if your opponent doesn't have a creature, you have to burn your own. There are ways of making Ghostfire work. I've seen some cool decks with it, but you really have to make a deck that suits this. It's just not universally usable, so I don't like it. Then we've got Hedron Banishing. Exile target opposing creature that costs 16 or less. If that creature is colored, exile an opposing colored support that costs 13 or less. Now, if this was just exile target opposing creature, and then if that creature is colored, exile an opposing support, then that would immediately make Googan a very good Planeswalker. But because you have the 16 or less and 13 or less, since you know what Planeswalker you're going up against every time, you can just go ahead and swap out some of the cards in your deck and just make it so your opponent can't do this. So this ability is awful. And then finally, we've got Pools of Becoming. So for 21 loyalty, gain 15 life, draw 5 cards, then the first 5 cards in your hand gain 10 mana. This looks a heck of a lot like Tamiyo's ability, but bad. Tamiyo draws more cards, is going to ultimately probably just give you more mana with those mana bonuses. You get to select what you're playing. Way better. This, not great. Also, super expensive. So all in all, none of his 3 abilities are abilities that I would really want to use a lot. You're going to have a hard time bringing up all these mana bonuses. So for that matter, Googan, pretty weak. So that does it for my guide on all the Planeswalkers. I hope this has been helpful for you and it helps you decide what it is you're going to get during the sale. Once again, if you're watching this after the sale, don't worry, I would still hold to this list for which walkers to buy. So that's all from me. I'll see you in the next one.